In the darkest corners of our planet, where sunlight has never kissed the seafloor, there lies a kingdom of silence, ancient, eternal, and unseen. Here, pressure could crush a human vessel like paper, and temperatures linger just above freezing. Yet, within this eternal night, life glows. Strange, delicate creatures drift like living lanterns through a black ocean older than time itself. And then, through the quiet abyss, something colossal descends. A giant of the blue world, a whale, lifeless, yet destined to bring forth a universe. As it sinks slowly through miles of water, its massive body becomes a fallen world, a feast for the unseen. This is not death. It is transformation, a ghostly cathedral of life born from decay. The deep sea swallows the whale's body, and what follows is a slow, beautiful unraveling of creation itself. Worms that eat bone, fish that glow like embers, crabs that scavenge in the shadows. Entire ecosystems rise and fall in the rhythm of this single descent. Welcome to the abyss, where endings feed beginnings, and where the cycle of life is written not in sunlight, but in darkness. If the surface ocean is our reflection, this, the trench, is our shadow. And within that shadow, the story of life becomes something far grander, far stranger, and far more eternal than we ever imagined. Before we descend together, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe, because what you're about to see is one of the most haunting, most beautiful miracles of our living planet. The ocean opens before us like a living sky, vast, shimmering, unknowable. Beneath its glimmering skin lies another world, hidden from the sun, where gravity and darkness rule with quiet authority. We begin at the surface, where waves roll in liquid glass and scatter sunlight like fragments of gold. A gentle rhythm hums across the blue, unaware that below, a story of unimaginable depth is about to unfold. A whale drifts here, immense and graceful. Its body, once filled with the breath of the world above, now lies still, a monument to the ocean's ancient rhythm of life and loss. Around it, the sea seems to hold its breath. The silence is not mourning, but reverence. For in this stillness begins the most haunting transformation in nature, the slow descent of a fallen giant into the abyss. The descent begins quietly. The whale's body tilts, weight pulling against the buoyancy of its past life. Sunlight shimmers through its skin for the last time, wrapping it in golden ribbons that fade with every meter it sinks. At 50 meters, color begins to die. The reds vanish first, swallowed by blue. At 100 meters, the green dims. By 200, the ocean turns indigo, a deepening melancholy that feels almost sacred. Currents wrap around the whale like ghosts, escorting it to its final resting place. Tiny plankton drift beside it, luminous specks of life flickering in the dimming light. They seem to mourn and celebrate all at once, glowing in brief defiance of the darkness. A school of fish passes, scattering into the void like sparks. Even they know the pull of what waits below. As we follow the body downward, the world changes. Pressure mounts, crushing space and silence together into something dense, eternal. The sound of the surface fades. No more waves, no cries of gulls, no hum of ships. Only the muted pulse of the deep. Here, time seems slower, stretched thin by distance and cold. Every meter down feels like falling through centuries. At 500 meters, the light fades to twilight. Creatures emerge from the blue mist, delicate, translucent beings that seem made of glass and thought. Jellyfish drift with slow grace, their tendrils trailing like silk ribbons in an invisible current. A calm jelly flashes iridescent light across its body, colors that exist nowhere else on Earth. Lanternfish rise from below, their eyes like small suns, each one a silent traveler in this eternal dusk. The whale continues its fall, moving through this strange cathedral of half-light. Around it, marine snow begins to fall, a steady, endless rain of organic particles. Dead plankton, fragments of shells, the dust of countless lives. It drifts downward like the slowest snowfall in existence. Each flake tells a story, and together they blanket the deep in memory. The whale becomes part of that story, an enormous shadow suspended in eternity. At 1,000 meters, we enter the midnight zone. No light from the sun will ever reach this far again. The whale is alone now, surrounded by the living darkness. But the dark here is not emptiness. It is life, condensed into its purest form. Creatures flash their own light in slow, pulsing rhythms: blue, green, violet. They speak in bioluminescent language, a symphony of survival and adaptation. A siphonophore drifts nearby, a colony of countless individual organisms fused into one, delicate, endless, alien. Its body glows in waves of blue that roll across the water like the breathing of a sleeping god. Small shrimp hover around it, blinking like stars, while a deep-sea jelly turns inside out in the distance, scattering sparks. The ocean, even here, is never still. The whale's body now looks pale against the void, a silhouette of quiet enormity. As it falls, the pressure grows unbearable, 1,000 times the weight of the air above the surface. Yet the ocean accepts it without resistance. The descent is slow, almost meditative. The whale's fins sway gently, as though it still dreams of swimming. We pass through layers of unseen worlds. At 2,000 meters, the water grows cold enough to steal heat from steel. Tiny amphipods swarm in the distance, feeding on the endless snow. They look fragile, but they are survivors of extremes shaped by eons of darkness. Each one senses the change, the scent of something vast and newly fallen. They begin to follow, guided by chemical whispers in the current. By 3,000 meters, even the sense of motion begins to fade. Here, everything drifts. The whale, the plankton, the very concept of time. It is a place beyond noise, beyond light, beyond human measure. The ocean trench yawns below like a mouth of eternity, waiting. And then, something extraordinary happens. As the whale falls, its movement stirs the stillness, creating a trail of turbulence that glows faintly. Bioluminescent organisms ignite in its wake, tracing its outline with fire. For a moment, it is as if a constellation has come loose from the sky and begun its descent back to the earth. A star dying, reborn in the dark. We follow this light until it fades. The body continues to sink, deeper still into the uncharted realm where no human eye has ever seen, where no sound echoes. The weight of the world above presses down, but within this silence, there is a strange serenity, as though the ocean itself is holding its breath, waiting for what comes next. Down here, at the edge of the abyss, we are no longer explorers. We are witnesses. Witnesses to a cycle as old as life itself, a story told in slow motion, written in darkness. The descent is almost complete. The whale is nearing its final resting place on the abyssal plain, a desert at the bottom of the sea, vast and still as the moon. Soon, it will touch the seafloor, and when it does, everything will change. The darkness will awaken. The scent of life and death will call to the hidden things. The deep will stir, and the unseen world will gather. For in this final moment, what falls from the surface does not die. It begins again. The abyss opens like a wound in the world, a chasm older than mountains, deeper than imagination. Down here, 3 kilometers below the sun, light no longer exists in any familiar form. Only pressure and darkness remain, ancient and infinite. The whale continues its silent plunge through the black, a slow spiral through gravity's endless embrace. Its body turns, gliding as though asleep, every motion smoothed by the patience of eternity. Around it, the deep ocean breathes in ways unseen. Thin layers of cold water slide over each other like shifting glass, carrying with them the whispers of continents, the dust of storms, the memory of ice ages. The whale passes through these layers like a drifting relic, a messenger from the living world above. With every meter, the weight of the ocean presses harder, compacting history into silence. The body begins to change. Its skin, once sleek and vibrant, takes on the pallor of stone. Bacteria bloom invisibly across its surface, an unseen awakening of microscopic hunger. They are the first to claim it, invisible architects of transformation. As decomposition begins, gases form within, trapped by the crushing pressure. The body swells, then stabilizes, suspended in perfect equilibrium, neither rising nor falling too quickly. It drifts like a planet, surrounded by a field of dust and drifting life. In the distance, shadows move, faint, deliberate. They are the deep's first responders, ancient scavengers that have evolved to sense the faintest trace of death. A few amphipods circle from afar, their small bodies pulsing with faint light. To them, this is not an ending but a beacon. The scent of decaying life carries through the current, spreading outward like a silent signal that will call creatures from miles away. The abyss, though it appears empty, listens. At 4,000 meters, the water grows so dense that every sound dies before it can travel. The ocean here is a vacuum of silence, absolute and infinite. Yet within it, life persists, strange, resilient, and unseen. An anglerfish drifts past, her body as dark as the void, her lure glowing like a star suspended from her forehead. She is a hunter of ghosts, born to exist where nothing else should. For a brief moment, her small light crosses the whale's path, casting a faint halo across the falling giant. Then she disappears, swallowed by the dark. The whale continues downward, passing through the deep's invisible ceiling, a layer scientists call the bathypelagic. This is the true realm of the abyss, where temperatures hover near freezing and the pressure would crush steel into silence. But the whale does not resist. It yields, surrendering to gravity's pull with quiet grace. Every fold of skin, every ripple of current becomes a meditation on stillness. Around it, the world begins to reveal its hidden inhabitants. Giant isopods scuttle over drifting debris, their segmented bodies gleaming faintly in reflected light. Deep-sea jellyfish pulse gently, their bells glowing with eerie transparency. Some release bursts of light when disturbed, creating spirals of blue fire that vanish as quickly as they appear. To witness it feels like watching dreams flicker into being, brief, beautiful, and gone. As the whale nears the abyssal plain, it enters the lowest reaches of the ocean, a realm so vast and empty that it defies understanding. Imagine deserts of silt stretching for thousands of kilometers, broken only by scars of trenches and the occasional volcanic mound. The seafloor here is quiet beyond words, a graveyard of ancient sediment where the bones of long-dead creatures have rested for millions of years. The descent slows. Gravity's pull softens as the whale's body approaches the bottom. Fine particles swirl in lazy spirals, disturbed by its shadow. The marine snow thickens here, settling like cosmic dust. Every grain has traveled for weeks, months, perhaps years, before landing on this silent floor. Together they form a shroud of memory, the sedimented history of the planet itself. The whale's fall is nearly complete. For a moment, it seems suspended in stillness, hovering just above the seafloor. Then, without sound or spectacle, it settles, a soft, muted impact. A ripple of silt blooms outward like smoke in slow motion. It drifts for minutes, maybe hours, before disappearing into calm once more. The whale has arrived, a giant resting in the deepest silence known to Earth. At first, nothing stirs. The body lies motionless, its vast form half buried in fine sediment. The darkness watches. Time stretches. Then, faintly, the deep begins to awaken. A distant flicker of movement. Amphipods approaching, drawn by scent and instinct. They swarm across the whale's flank like drifting shadows, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Their bodies are small, but their hunger immense. They find the soft tissue first, carving tunnels through the skin, releasing clouds of organic matter that drift upward like smoke signals into the void. The scent travels. Far above, in the surrounding trenches, other creatures sense it. Hagfish begin their slow, serpentine journey toward the source. Their bodies twist through the dark, guided by chemical trails invisible to all but them. Giant isopods trudge methodically over the seafloor, like armored scavengers of an ancient battlefield. The deep ocean is awakening, one creature at a time. As the feast begins, the whale's body becomes a living world, a small continent of flesh and bone sustaining an entire ecosystem. Each bite releases energy stored from the sun, energy gathered through plankton, through krill, through the whale's life, and now returned to the deep. The cycle is perfect. The whale's fall is both a death and a beginning. But there is something more profound in this moment, a strange serenity that comes from surrender. In this silent world, there are no cries, no violence, only the patient exchange between life and decay. Every creature here is fulfilling a purpose, written not in language but in instinct. The whale does not resist, it gives. And through that giving, the abyss is fed. Above, the last traces of its descent fade from the water. The currents settle again, returning the ocean to stillness. The marine snow resumes its endless drift, covering the giant's outline with a gentle rain of dust. In the darkness, the cycle continues, quiet, eternal, unseen. For those who might one day discover this place with robotic eyes and steel machines, it will appear like a grave. But for the creatures that call this realm home, it is not a grave at all. It is a miracle, a rare and fleeting bloom in a desert of shadows. And as the deep settles into rhythm, the story of the descent ends not in silence, but in quiet anticipation. The abyss has received its offering, and life has gathered to claim it. Soon, the feast will begin in full, a spectacle of survival unlike anything seen on the surface world. The ocean floor lies still, vast, barren, untouched. It stretches beyond sight, a landscape painted in monotones of gray and shadow. There are no landmarks here, no trees or mountains, only the endless plain of silt and quiet. Yet into this emptiness, something new has arrived. The whale's body rests like a fallen moon, its immense form casting soft contours upon the desert of the deep. For the first time in perhaps years, this silent world feels the vibration of change. The water carries the scent of the whale's decay, faint but unmistakable, an invisible signal that spreads through the blackness like a message in an ancient language. It is the scent of possibility. To us, it might seem like death. To the abyss, it is the promise of life. From the darkness beyond sight, the first visitors emerge. They are small, nearly translucent like drifting fragments of glass. Amphipods, the ocean's eternal scavengers, arrive in swarms, drawn by instinct older than memory. Their bodies shimmer with faint reflections, their movements rhythmic and purposeful. They descend upon the whale's surface, forming rippling clouds that shift and pulse with quiet precision. To them, the whale is not a creature. It is a world. They dig into the soft tissues first, working in silence. Each tiny movement releases clouds of organic matter, a storm of microscopic particles that rise, twist, and drift upward like incense smoke. In the glow of bioluminescent creatures nearby, the cloud glitters faintly, like stardust scattering in slow motion. Within minutes, the whale's surface becomes alive with motion. What was once still now trembles with purpose. Soon, larger shapes appear on the horizon of the seafloor. They move slowly, methodically, as if feeling their way through eternity. Hagfish, pale, serpentine, ancient. Their bodies undulate like ribbons of smoke, twisting through the current with unhurried grace. They have no eyes that can see in this darkness. Instead, they navigate by touch, by scent, by the electric hum of life and death. They find the whale easily. The hagfish slip into the soft flesh, burrowing through it, their slimy bodies glistening faintly in the dim light. They feed not in frenzy, but in ritual. As they move, they release mucus, wrapping themselves in a protective sheen, a silent armor against the abyss. They are grotesque and elegant all at once, survivors of a world that never sees the sun. Nearby, giant isopods approach, their movements deliberate and heavy. Each one is the size of a human hand, armored in plates like a creature from another time. Their jointed legs press softly into the sediment, leaving tracks that vanish moments later. They gather around the whale's jaw, its flippers, its ribs working their way across the body like patient gardeners tending to a decaying tree. Their mandibles move slowly, rhythmically, as they tear small fragments from the carcass. The scene unfolds in eerie stillness. No sound breaks the moment, only the slow drift of particles, the faint bioluminescence, and the rhythm of the scavenger's motion. Above the whale, small fish dart in and out of the feeding clouds, catching fragments drifting upward. Every layer of the deep now feeds from the fallen giant. The ocean, once empty, begins to bloom. The whale fall is transforming the desert into a city. Bacteria multiply on its surface, creating soft films that shimmer faintly like frost. Tiny worms emerge from the sediment, sensing the new abundance. Even crabs, slow-moving hermits of the abyss, begin their cautious approach. One by one, they come, drawn by instinct, by hunger, by the unseen call that binds all life in the ocean together. And then, amid the quiet chaos, light appears. It starts faintly, like a whisper in the dark. Small flickers of blue along the whale's side. They are bioluminescent bacteria, blooming in streaks across the decomposing skin. The body glows softly, eerily, like a ghost lantern floating on the seafloor. The light spreads slowly, tracing veins and scars, marking the outlines of its ancient body. It is both haunting and beautiful. Death illuminated from within. From the shadows beyond, a deep-sea grenadier drifts closer. Its long tail moves like a ribbon, its face expressionless, eyes glowing faintly from reflected light. It circles the whale once, twice, studying. Then it glides downward, settling near a fin. It waits, cautious, patient. Predators here know that time moves differently. There is no rush when eternity is your companion. Above, clouds of amphipods shimmer as they feed, their movement forming swirling halos. The whale, once a single being, now sustains thousands. Every mouthful, every bite, sends fragments drifting away, nutrients carried into the water, feeding plankton, bacteria, and unseen life for miles around. The whale is not dying. It is dispersing itself into the ocean, becoming everything. The camera of the mind zooms outward. From above, the whale looks like a glowing island in an infinite black sea. Around it, trails of movement radiate outward, the paths of scavengers coming and going, the marks of small creatures burrowing through silt. The darkness around remains infinite, but the whale fall shines like a heartbeat, faint, steady, and alive. Far away, other senses awaken. Sharks, slow, deep-sea wanderers, catch the scent. Six-gill sharks, massive and prehistoric, rise from the depths of the trenches. Their bodies glide through the dark like shadows of stone. They move with measured purpose, guided not by sight but by the electric pulse of the fallen giant. They have smelled this before, perhaps years ago. Another whale, another gift from above. They follow the current, their presence both majestic and ominous. As they draw near, the smaller scavengers scatter into the sediment, hiding within crevices and beneath folds of flesh. The sharks circle in silence. One moves closer, its pale eyes reflecting faint light. It opens its jaws, rows of teeth catching the glow for an instant, then closes them upon the whale's flank. A slow, deliberate bite. Flesh tears softly, releasing clouds of matter that spiral upward. The sharks feed with ritual precision, taking what the deep offers without haste. Around them, the smaller creatures return unbothered. The deep knows no greed, no waste, only balance. Even the predators here play their role in the silent orchestra of decay. The feast will last months, perhaps a year. Every day, more species will arrive. Fish, worms, crustaceans, microbes, all drawn into this sacred exchange between death and renewal. The whale's body, once a singular creature, will soon become a universe of life. And so, in the deepest dark, surrounded by silence older than humanity itself, a fallen giant begins to give birth again, not to calves or songs, but to worlds. The first act of arrival is complete. The deep has accepted its offering. But what comes next is beyond even the beauty of this awakening. For when the flesh is gone and only the bones remain, another miracle will begin, a transformation so strange it borders on the divine. The whale now lies in the heart of the abyss, an ancient monument surrounded by stillness. The current here is barely more than a whisper, a slow-moving tide that carries fine particles of organic dust like stardust drifting in a forgotten galaxy. Around the carcass, the sediment has begun to shift, disturbed by the movement of life. Shapes emerge from the gloom, small at first, uncertain, as though testing the boundaries of this new oasis. A rat-tailed fish glides close, its body ghostly pale, eyes large and vacant, like a creature molded by shadow itself. It circles once, twice, then vanishes into the black curtain. The whale's body gleams faintly, coated in a soft sheen of bacterial bloom, the first sign that decay has begun to awaken the unseen machinery of life. The scent of decomposition, though undetectable to human senses, carries like a siren call across miles of cold water. To the deep's inhabitants, it is a signal older than memory, a promise of sustenance, of survival. The first to answer are the hagfish. They come twisting from the darkness, eel-like and sinuous, their skin glistening with slime that defies the grasp of predators. They slip into the folds of the whale's flesh, writhing through wounds and cavities with a slow, deliberate hunger. Their feeding is not cruel, not violent. It is purposeful, methodical. In the deep sea, there is no waste. Every morsel is sacred, every act of consumption a quiet reverence to the endless cycle that governs the abyss. As they feed, clouds of detritus rise like spectral smoke, drifting in slow motion through the beam of imagined light. The water becomes a haze of movement, tiny crustaceans dancing amid drifting flakes of flesh, amphipods darting like sparks from a dying fire. Their bodies shimmer translucent, delicate as glass, yet their hunger is insatiable. They pick clean what larger scavengers leave behind, turning death into dust and dust into life. The whale's body, once a symbol of power and grace, becomes a celestial field of motion, a silent storm of creation unfolding in the stillest place on earth. The camera of the mind pans slowly, revealing more of this strange congregation. Giant isopods creep across the seafloor, armored like ancient knights, their claws delicate despite their monstrous form. They move in deliberate steps, guided by chemical trails invisible to the human eye. Their antennae sweep the water in rhythmic arcs, tasting the scent of decay, sensing opportunity. They gather at the whale's flanks and begin their slow harvest, slicing through softened tissue with jaws built not for speed but for endurance. Each movement is a study in patience, evolution's art sculpted over millennia of pressure and darkness. Above them, deep-sea grenadiers hover like sentinels, motionless but watchful. Their large eyes glint faintly, capturing any flicker of bioluminescence. Occasionally, one darts forward to snatch a drifting amphipod, a spark of life extinguished in an instant. Yet there is no cruelty here, only balance. The whale fall has become a living stage, and every creature plays its role with ancient precision. As days pass, the sight transforms further. Bacteria bloom across the whale's surface, forming delicate veils of color, pale blues, soft greens, sometimes an eerie white that glows faintly when disturbed. These microbial mats are the invisible architects of this ecosystem. They release chemical cues into the water, summoning other species from afar, shrimp, crabs, and strange worms that have never known sunlight. The whale in death has become a signal beacon in a realm without light, a pulse that radiates across the deep. The narration slows, reflecting on the beauty of this transformation. From the surface world, we often see death as an ending, abrupt, final, and silent. But here, in the abyss, death is a language spoken fluently by life itself. The whale's body is no longer its own. It is a cathedral for existence, its every fragment sustaining something unseen. Each rib becomes a scaffold for coral-like growths, each cavity a shelter for scavengers. The boundaries between decay and renewal blur until they are indistinguishable. The camera moves closer, revealing the faces of creatures that seem to defy imagination. One resembles a walking feather, its body translucent and its limbs like threads. Another pulses with faint blue light, each beat of luminescence a rhythm of survival. There are creatures here with no eyes, others with mouths that glow, and some that seem to drift between matter and dream. These beings are the inheritors of the deep, the keepers of balance in a realm we can barely comprehend. As the feeding continues, the whale fall becomes a city. The scavengers, though small, create order within chaos. There are hierarchies here, the largest feeding first, the smallest waiting for what remains. But even the tiniest copepod, invisible to the naked eye, has a place in this vast choreography. They drift through the water like dust motes in a beam of starlight, collecting nutrients that will one day rise again toward the surface, feeding plankton, fish, and eventually whales once more. The cycle closes in upon itself, perfect and eternal. Somewhere above, far beyond the reach of these creatures, a storm might be raging, waves crashing upon distant shores. But here, none of that matters. The deep sea is untouched by weather, by sunlight, by time. The only clock that ticks here is the rhythm of decay, the slow unraveling of what once was. The whale's body continues to change, its flesh thinning, its bones beginning to emerge, smooth and ivory against the dark mud. The scavengers thin out, their feast nearly done. But as one stage of life fades, another begins to stir beneath the surface. Microbes unseen to the naked eye begin to colonize the exposed bone. They feed not on flesh but on the chemical whispers released by its decay. Hydrogen sulfide seeps into the water, poisonous to most, but a gift to the next wave of life that will soon follow. The camera lingers on the skeletal frame, massive, solemn, and strangely beautiful. In this moment, the narration softens to a whisper. What remains of the whale is more than bone. It is a seed, a promise of transformation waiting to unfold in the dark. Time drifts differently here, as though each second stretches into eternity. Days merge into weeks, weeks into months, and the whale's body, once full of movement and sound, now lies quiet, an immense relic settled upon the cold seafloor. Its once supple flesh is now soft and pallid, folding upon itself like ancient parchment. The scavengers that once swarmed in thousands begin to thin out, their hunger fading as the richest layers of flesh vanish. Only fragments remain, tendons stretched like threads, a rib jutting into the void like the broken mast of a sunken ship. Yet within this slow decay, life has not retreated. It has only changed form. The camera glides low across the seafloor, capturing the residue of the feast. The sand is littered with tiny tracks, each one the signature of a survivor. Here, a crab scuttles sideways, carrying a piece of cartilage like a treasure. There, a cluster of amphipods gathers over a faint shimmer of oil that seeps from the whale's marrow. The airless silence of the deep hides the sounds of this world, but in imagination, one can hear it. the faint clicking of chitin against bone, the soft sifting of sediment, the quiet pulse of distant life. Even in this isolation, the abyss hums with purpose. As the whale's remaining tissues dissolve, the process becomes chemical, alchemical even. Bacteria continue their invisible work, digesting, transforming, releasing new substances into the water, molecules that will sustain what comes next. A faint mist of hydrogen sulfide begins to rise from the decomposing mass. And though it is deadly to most life on Earth, to some it is a beacon, a signal that an entirely new kind of ecosystem is ready to begin. The narration pauses here, letting the thought linger. Death, once again, is the architect of creation. Far away, beyond sight, creatures sense this transformation. They are drawn to it not by scent, but by the chemical whispers carried through the water, messages of opportunity. Among them are strange, ghostly beings, polychaete worms with bodies like smoke, bacteria feeding mollusks with shells as thin as ash, and tiny crustaceans whose exoskeletons shimmer faintly with bioluminescence. They gather slowly, almost reverently, as if attending a sacred ritual. Around the whale's bones, they begin to settle, forming colonies that will soon reshape this barren land into something extraordinary. The light, imagined by the filmmaker's lens, sweeps across the massive skeleton. The jawbones arched like the entrance to an ancient temple. Sediment has begun to settle upon the remains, softening the hard edges, turning them into monuments half buried in time. The camera lingers there, letting the image breathe before turning upward, where the water above seems infinite. One can almost feel the weight of it, the crushing kilometers of ocean pressing down on this place, reminding us of how small life is, yet how determined. Every organism here is a triumph against the impossible. No sunlight, no oxygen, temperatures near freezing, pressure that would flatten steel. And yet, in these conditions, nature finds balance. It doesn't resist the darkness, it evolves within it. The hagfish that once fed on the whale's flesh now drift away to find new sources of decay. The amphipods scatter into the currents, carrying with them the invisible nutrients that will feed other creatures miles away. And in their absence, new pioneers arrive, life that doesn't feed on flesh, but on chemistry. The narration deepens, poetic and reflective. It speaks of how creation is not a single act, but a continuum, one life feeding another endlessly, without hierarchy or mercy. It tells us that the whale's fall is not a tragedy, but a gift, a final gesture to the ocean that once carried it. Its death has sustained thousands, and its bones will nourish thousands more. In this, there is a kind of grace, an understanding that even in the deepest shadows, existence finds equilibrium. Through the blackness, the camera now captures something unexpected, faint clouds of light drifting across the carcass. Bioluminescent organisms, perhaps shrimp or plankton, pulse with ghostly rhythm, their glow reflected on the pale curve of bone. For a moment, the whale's skeleton appears illuminated from within, as if memory itself has taken shape in the water. The glow fades slowly, leaving behind only the suggestion of movement, a whisper of beauty in the dark. And then, silence returns. A silence so profound it feels alive. The kind of silence where you can almost hear the earth breathing. The kind that humbles you, makes you aware that what we see as stillness is, in truth, an ongoing act of creation too vast to comprehend. The whale fall is no longer a scene of feeding or decay. It is a transition, a threshold. Life here has entered its next stage, subtle and unseen. In this still moment, the narrator's voice becomes softer, more intimate. It speaks not to the viewer, but to the ocean itself, a whisper of gratitude, a reverent acknowledgement of the cycles that sustain this blue planet. The camera pulls back, showing the entire skeleton resting like a cathedral in the abyss. The sand ripples faintly in the slow current. Tiny creatures shimmer like stars scattered across a night sky. The boundaries between the living and the dead dissolve until there is no difference at all, only continuity. And as the scene fades to black, the voice returns one last time, measured, poetic, contemplative. The whale's journey does not end here. What the scavengers have left behind will now become the foundation for a world built on sulfur and shadow. Even in death, the whale continues to create. The abyss has accepted its offering, and from its bones, new life will soon rise. The sound of the deep hum fades into silence. The screen darkens completely, and the audience is left suspended between wonder and melancholy, between the known and the infinite. The chapter closes with a lingering sense of awe, an understanding that in the deepest corners of Earth, even decay carries light. The abyss has awakened. Where once there was stillness, now movement ripples outward, subtle but inexorable. The whale's bones lie exposed, skeletal monuments rising from the sediment like the ruins of a forgotten city. The last remnants of flesh have been stripped away, and in that absence, a new form of life stirs, organisms drawn not to the taste of meat, but to the chemical richness seeping from marrow and bone. Hydrogen sulfide clouds drift in slow eddies, invisible to human eyes, but to the denizens of the deep, they are a clarion call, a signal older than time, louder than any surface storm. Tiny worms, translucent and delicate, emerge first. They burrow into the soft sediments surrounding the skeleton, ingesting bacteria and organic detritus. Each movement releases microparticles into the current, which are carried outward, invisible sparks in the endless dark. Small crustaceans follow, drawn by the same chemical signal, their legs scuttling across the seafloor with a rhythmic precision. They weave between bones, extracting nourishment from the residue of decay, and in doing so, they create the foundation of an ecosystem that thrives without sunlight. Above the skeleton, clouds of amphipods swirl like living smoke, their silver-gray bodies catching the faint glimmers of bioluminescence. Each tiny creature is a node in a network of survival, picking clean what larger scavengers have abandoned. Their movement is mesmerizing, a slow dance of life upon the bones of a giant. The seabed around them, once barren and monotone, now pulses faintly with activity, the first signs of an abyssal city built upon death. Bacteria, invisible to the eye, but immense in influence, colonize the bones and sediments. They consume the oils within the marrow, converting them into hydrogen sulfide. This chemical, deadly to most creatures, feeds specialized organisms that cluster around the skeleton. Giant tube worms begin to appear, their white bodies stretching from the sediment like candles in a cathedral. They anchor themselves firmly, absorbing sulfides through their plumes and providing sustenance to the microscopic communities around them. Life that had once seemed impossible in this dark, pressurized world flourishes, a testament to adaptation and persistence. Larger predators now sense the abundance. Deep-sea fish glide slowly toward the skeleton, drawn by the unseen signal of survival. Their eyes, adapted to the faintest light, capture the faint bioluminescent glimmers of smaller organisms. Each bite taken is calculated and precise. There is no frenzy here, only the meticulous choreography of a world in balance. Even the six-gill sharks, massive and slow, drift nearby, inspecting the site with ancient patience before retreating to let smaller creatures feed in peace. The whale's bones themselves are changing. Exposed ivory and cartilage leach nutrients into the surrounding sediment, feeding worms, mollusks, and bacteria. Tiny shrimp move over the bones, their delicate forms reflecting faint pulses of light, while amphipods continue their relentless consumption. The skeleton is no longer merely a structure. It has become a hub of life, a generator of energy, a foundation for countless organisms that will live and die in cycles invisible to the surface world. Bioluminescence flickers constantly, painting the scene in ethereal blues and greens. Tube worms sway gently in the currents, their feathery plumes catching drifting particles. Amphipods and small crustaceans weave among them, feeding and dispersing nutrients. It is a world of perpetual motion, yet no chaos disturbs it. Every organism has its place, every role its purpose. The feast is ongoing, sustained not by abundance, but by the careful balance of what remains and what the deep can transform. In this darkness, the idea of time becomes fluid. Days, weeks, months, all are measured not in hours, but in the rhythms of life. The whale fall has created a temporary oasis in a desert of silt and shadow, a place where life blossoms despite the crushing pressure, the freezing temperatures, the eternal night. Even the water itself becomes part of the ecosystem, carrying nutrients outward, spreading life beyond the immediate vicinity of the skeleton. Small polychaete worms burrow deeper into the bones, their thin bodies threading through marrow cavities and producing further chemical changes. This allows new microbes to colonize, expanding the range of life that the whale fall can sustain. Each organism, no matter how small, contributes to a cascade of energy that feeds the entire abyssal plane. The feast is more than sustenance. It is transformation, a cycle of chemical and biological rebirth that continues long after the surface world forgets the fallen whale. Above the skeleton, a cloud of drifting particles reflects the faint pulses of bioluminescent light, creating an ethereal halo. It is as though the skeleton itself breathes, a ghostly presence in a silent cathedral of the deep. Tiny crabs scuttle along its contours, taking their place among worms, amphipods, and tube worms. Every inch of the whale is occupied, every crevice a microcosm of life. Even as larger scavengers depart, the skeleton continues to sustain life on scales both visible and invisible, a center of gravity for an entire abyssal community. The narrator's voice becomes reverent, almost hushed. It speaks of the miracle unfolding in the darkness, where death does not signify an end, but a beginning. The whale's body has transformed into a generator of energy, a hub of life that persists against impossible odds. Here, in the unlit depths, the laws of survival are rewritten, and every creature has found its niche. It is a feast in the truest sense, not just consumption, but creation, transformation, and renewal. The feast will continue for months, perhaps years. More species will arrive, drawn by chemical signals, each adding complexity to the ecosystem. Worms will burrow deeper, shrimp will multiply, and bacteria will colonize every surface. Even the skeleton, once massive and solitary, will become porous, hosting communities that survive in the darkness, feeding, reproducing, and sustaining life beyond the reach of light. The whale, though gone from the surface world, has achieved immortality in its own way, a life-giving monument in the deepest corners of the planet. The abyssal feast has only just begun. From these bones, a world grows, unseen by human eyes, yet vast, intricate, and alive. Life, in its quiet persistence, continues to defy darkness. The whale fall is no longer a carcass. It is a nexus, a sacred stage for the drama of survival, a testament to the resilience and adaptability of the deep. The abyss has fully awakened. Around the whale's skeleton, life pulses with relentless intensity, yet with a rhythm so measured it seems choreographed by the ocean itself. Tube worms sway gently in the faint current, their feathery plumes catching drifting nutrients, while tiny amphipods dart across the bones like sparks in a slow living fire. Every crevice, every cavity has become a microcosm, a city of creatures woven together by necessity, by chemical signals, by the unspoken rules of survival in a world without light. From the sediment rise polychaete worms, their translucent bodies threading through soft tissue remnants and marrow cavities. They burrow slowly, releasing chemicals that invite colonization by new microbes. These microorganisms, invisible yet immense in influence, transform the whale's bones into a hub of energy, Hydrogen sulfide and other chemical byproducts rise in slow clouds, drifting outward into the abyssal plains. To surface eyes, it would appear empty. To the deep, it is a beacon, a promise of abundance that extends miles beyond the skeleton itself. Giant isopods, their armored bodies reflecting faint pulses of bioluminescence, arrive from surrounding plains. They crawl deliberately across ribs and vertebrae, taking their place in the hierarchy of scavengers. Each movement is patient and precise, a testament to millennia of adaptation to this extreme environment. Even as they consume, they create space for smaller creatures, amphipods, worms, and bacteria, to continue the slow, meticulous transformation of death into life. The feast is not chaos. It is structured, deliberate, eternal. Above, deep-sea fish drift like shadows, their pale bodies catching the glimmers of bioluminescent organisms scattered across the whale's remains. Their large eyes search for tiny crustaceans and drifting larvae, feeding opportunistically in a scene that balances delicacy with violence. Each bite is measured, each movement purposeful. They are predators, yes, but they respect the rhythm of the feast, taking only what the ecosystem allows without destabilizing it. The whale's bones are slowly hollowed by chemical and biological forces. Marrow cavities, once dense with nutrient-rich tissue, now host networks of bacteria and sulfide-consuming organisms. Small shrimp weave through these hollows, their delicate bodies reflecting faint pulses of light, feeding on the bacteria and microbial mats that coat the bone. Every action produces microcurrents, distributing nutrients into the surrounding sediment and creating pockets of life where none existed before. The sediment itself seems to participate in the spectacle. As amphipods and worms move, particles of organic matter drift upward, forming clouds that shimmer faintly under bioluminescent light. These clouds feed microorganisms in the water column, sustaining species far beyond the immediate vicinity of the skeleton. The whale, though stationary, radiates influence outward, touching life across a vast, dark landscape. Its death has become a force that transcends its physical form, sustaining an entire community in the most inhospitable depths of the ocean. Even predators sense the chemical signals. Six-gill sharks, enormous and ancient, drift into the edges of the site, their slow, methodical movements exuding authority. They inspect the skeleton, sniffing the chemical clouds, assessing the scene with measured care. When they do bite, it is deliberate. A brief puncture here, a grazing tear there, enough to feed but not disrupt. In this realm, survival is not predicated on dominance alone. It is mediated by balance. The apex predators understand that the continuity of the ecosystem depends on patience, on restraint, on respect for the rhythms of the abyss. The glow of bioluminescence intensifies. Tiny shrimp, copepods, and worms pulse with faint light, illuminating the skeleton in shifting hues of blue and green. The bones appear to breathe, ghostly and luminous, as if the whale itself were alive again in another form. Even the water around the skeleton seems infused with energy, currents carrying nutrients, chemical signals, and drifting life outward in concentric patterns that ripple like unseen waves across the seafloor. Time in this realm has no measure. Weeks, months, perhaps years pass unnoticed. The whale fall becomes a stage for the full expression of abyssal life. Each species performs its role. Scavengers, predators, bacteria, worms, and the interplay between them sustains a delicate equilibrium. Nothing is wasted, nothing destroyed. Decay is creation, and creation is ongoing. The skeleton, stripped of flesh, glows with the activity of life, a monument not to death, but to resilience. The narrator's voice, soft and reflective, guides the audience through this unseen world. It speaks of cycles of energy, of the conversion of flesh into gas, into bacteria, into worms, into crustaceans and fish. It reminds us that life in the deep is not linear but circular, every organism feeding another, every chemical reaction giving birth to yet more life. Here, death is not final. Here, it is transformation writ large, poetic in scope, unfathomable in scale. The camera lingers over the largest bones. Vertebrae rise like columns of a cathedral, their surfaces colonized by microbial mats and shimmering worms. Ribs arch like bridges across the silt, pathways for small creatures, highways for amphipods. Even the skull, hollowed and worn, houses entire microecosystems, its eye sockets and jaws providing shelter for shrimp, worms, and tiny predatory fish. Every inch of the whale's body is utilized, every space an opportunity for life. Above the skeleton, the feasting community has grown into something extraordinary. Clouds of amphipods swirl like living smoke. Worms burrow deeper into the sediment, expanding colonies of microbes that sustain them. Shrimp dart through the chemical haze, their tiny lights blinking like stars against the infinite black. Even the water column above is enriched, carrying nutrients to distant ecosystems, connecting the abyssal feast to life far beyond. The whale, once a singular being of flesh and bone, has become a universe. Its death has created not just a site of consumption, but a living, breathing ecosystem that endures in ways unimaginable on the surface. Life has transformed, adapted, and multiplied, demonstrating the resilience and ingenuity of existence in the harshest environment on Earth. And yet, the feast is only beginning. The skeleton continues to release nutrients, chemical signals, and energy into the water. More species will arrive. More adaptations will unfold. The whale fall is a catalyst, a spark in the infinite dark, igniting processes that will persist for decades. From the bones of a single giant, an entire community thrives, unseen and untouchable, a living testament to the enduring power of life in the abyss. The abyss now hums with life, a subtle, constant vibration beneath the crushing weight of the dark. The whale's skeleton, once a solitary relic, has become a thriving metropolis for creatures that defy imagination. Tube worms sway like silent sentinels, their plumes extending into the nutrient-rich current, catching particles that drift downward from the surface and those rising from the skeleton itself. Amphipods dart between the plumes in frenetic bursts, their movements reflecting faint pulses of bioluminescent light. Every inch of the whale's massive frame is alive, each bone a scaffold for life, each cavity a microcosm where survival and predation intertwine in a delicate balance. From the sediment, polychaete worms extend their translucent bodies into the chemical currents. They burrow, feed, and retreat in patterns shaped by millions of years of evolution. These seemingly simple creatures orchestrate an unseen ballet, distributing nutrients, oxygen, and microbial life through the sediments surrounding the skeleton. Bacteria thrive on the organic molecules released by the decaying marrow, transforming chemical energy into sustenance for higher organisms. It is a feast of chemistry, unseen but profoundly alive, a banquet where life is measured not in abundance, but in opportunity. Giant isopods patrol the whale's bones, moving deliberately, methodically, their armored bodies reflecting the faint bioluminescent glow that dances across the seafloor. They take what they need, leaving spaces for amphipods and smaller scavengers to claim. The hierarchy is invisible, fluid, yet absolute. Even six-gill sharks drift nearby, massive and imposing, patrolling the perimeter with measured patience. They take only when necessary, respecting the rhythm of this living monument, for the feast is a careful orchestration, and disruption could imperil the delicate balance. Above, bioluminescent shrimp pulse in faint flashes, illuminating the skeletal arches in ethereal hues. Their movements are quick, precise, and purposeful, creating a shifting tapestry of light across the bones. Crustaceans scuttle along ribs and vertebrae, their tiny claws scraping surfaces smooth, turning decay into new forms of energy. Microorganisms coat every surface, invisible yet vital, producing chemical gradients that attract new arrivals, larvae, planktonic organisms, and other small creatures carried by the abyssal current. The skeleton, though devoid of life in its original form, is more alive now than it ever was in its prime. The feast reaches a heightened intensity. Clouds of amphipods swarm in synchronized waves, darting from rib to rib, from jaw to vertebrae, consuming, digesting, and dispersing nutrients with relentless efficiency. Worms extend their feathery appendages into currents, capturing chemical signals and particles alike. Tube worms pulse rhythmically, their plumes creating eddies that draw microbes into circulation. Even the sediment itself participates, moving imperceptibly under the weight of feeding activity, shifting to accommodate tunnels, burrows, and pathways carved by the smallest creatures. Predation is present but controlled. Deep-sea fish patrol the outer edges, eyes wide and reflective, picking off drifting amphipods and shrimp. Their movements are deliberate. A bite here, a capture there, enough to feed without disrupting the swarm. The sharks, too, make brief visits, testing the boundaries, grazing selectively before retreating into shadowy corridors. In this environment, survival depends on both patience and restraint, a stark contrast to the chaotic violence often imagined in shallow waters. Hydrogen sulfide continues to seep from the bones, invisible yet omnipresent. Specialized organisms feed on it, bacteria that form the base of a chemosynthetic food web, sustaining worms, crustaceans, and tiny mollusks. Each chemical reaction drives energy through the ecosystem, feeding species that have never known sunlight. The whale fall has become a self-sustaining hub, a nucleus of life radiating outward into the barren abyss. From the skeleton, energy flows, connecting unseen networks and linking species across vast distances. Time loses meaning here. Days, months, years, all measured in rhythms of feeding, growth, and reproduction. The whale's skeleton, once a simple carcass, now hosts generations of organisms. Tube worms reproduce, creating new colonies. Amphipods swell in population, their swarming patterns extending farther from the skeleton. Crustaceans lay eggs in hidden crevices, and microbial mats expand, coating bones in living carpets. Every species plays its part in sustaining the feast, an intricate dance that balances consumption with regeneration. The narrator's voice reflects this wonder, soft and deliberate, painting the scene with reverent awe. It speaks of cycles invisible to the human eye, of life emerging from death, informs the challenge imagination. The whale, in its passing, has become a source of infinite opportunity, a catalyst for transformation. Every organism here is a participant in a network that stretches beyond the skeleton, connecting the chemical whispers of the deep with life that thrives unseen, far above in the twilight layers or even closer to the surface. The whale's bones, though stark and pale, are illuminated by the gentle glow of bioluminescent organisms. Each vertebra is a platform for crustaceans and worms. Ribs arch like bridges across the silt, pathways for amphipods to navigate and feed. Hollow cavities house entire microecosystems, protected and self-contained. Even the skull, with eye sockets empty and jaw gaping, hosts networks of life that pulse with the rhythm of the feast. The skeleton, though dead, sustains more life than it ever could as a living whale. And yet the climax of the feast has not yet been reached. The chemical reactions within the bones intensify, drawing new organisms to the site. Larger tube worms expand their colonies, crustaceans multiply in hidden nooks, and microscopic bacteria form ever larger mats. The entire system pulses with a quiet power, energy flowing from decay into life, connecting organisms in a chain as old as the deep ocean itself. The feast is at once violent and gentle, chaotic and precise, a living testament to the extraordinary resilience of the abyss. The camera slowly pulls back, capturing the skeleton in its entirety. Around it, Clouds of amphipods swirl, tube worms wave, and bioluminescent flashes illuminate the complex web of life that now thrives on a fallen giant. From this perspective, the whale fall is not merely an event. It is an ecosystem in miniature, a thriving city built upon chemical energy and evolutionary mastery. Life here has adapted in ways beyond imagination, transforming death into opportunity, absence into abundance. In the quiet finality of the scene, the narrator whispers one last observation. In the depths of the ocean, life thrives where the surface sees only void. The whale, fallen yet immortal, has become a foundation for generations unseen. Its death is a feast, a gift, a continuation, proof that even in darkness, life endures. The abyss has reached a crescendo. The whale's skeleton, stripped of flesh but alive in influence, pulses with unseen energy. Microbes colonize every crevice, their invisible labor transforming bone into a chemical engine. Hydrogen sulfide rises in slow, ghostly currents, invisible yet intoxicating to the creatures that depend upon it. Tube worms, their bodies anchored in sediment and bone, extend plumes that catch drifting particles and chemical energy alike, feeding themselves and sustaining the delicate web that spans the skeleton. Every inch of the whale's remains is now a habitat, every cavity a portal into a bustling microcosm. Amphipods swirl like clouds of smoke, their silver-gray bodies reflecting the faint flashes of bioluminescent life. They weave through the rib cage, over vertebrae, beneath arches of bone, feeding and redistributing energy with meticulous care. Small crustaceans scuttle along, grazing on bacterial mats, their movements imperceptible to all but the most attentive observer. Even the silt itself participates in this choreography, stirred by the gentle, relentless motion of creatures above and below. What was once static has become dynamic, a living cathedral of motion, light, and chemical alchemy. Above the skeleton, deep-sea fish drift in cautious arcs, drawn by the chemical signature of the feast. They move slowly, almost reverently, grazing opportunistically among the amphipods and shrimp. Six-gill sharks patrol the outer limits, enormous shadows sliding along the edges of the site, touching the feast with deliberate care before retreating. The apex predators are part of the rhythm, not disruptors. Even in death, the whale dictates the terms of life, a subtle command written in chemistry and anatomy, honored by every organism in its orbit. The skeleton itself is changing. Bones hollowed by microbial activity and chemical reactions glow faintly with the metabolism of bacteria. Organic compounds leak from marrow cavities, feeding tube worms and polychaetes, enriching the surrounding sediment with nutrients that will sustain life long after the last amphipod has moved on. The skull, eye sockets empty and jaw gaping, has become a sanctuary for shrimp and worms. Vertebrae rise like columns, ribs form bridges and tunnels, and every surface hosts a cascade of activity invisible to the world above. The whale's remains have become a living machine, a generator of life sustained entirely by decay. Hydrogen sulfide, rising like a silent exhalation, attracts a new wave of organisms. Specialized mollusks, tiny crustaceans, and chemosynthetic bacteria converge, feeding on chemical energy rather than flesh. They form dense colonies on bone surfaces, around tube worms, and within sediment pockets. This chemosynthetic bloom is a second life for the whale, a transformation from the biological feast of scavengers to a chemically powered ecosystem. Energy flows outward, reaching beyond the skeleton to sustain organisms that will never touch the whale itself. The feast reaches its zenith. Amphipods swirl in vast clouds, moving as one, feeding, dispersing nutrients, and creating microcurrents that carry life across the seafloor. Tube worms pulse in synchrony, drawing energy from chemical gradients, their plumes painting the darkness with ghostly rhythm. Shrimp and tiny crustaceans weave between vertebrae and ribs, their delicate forms illuminated by bioluminescent flickers. Each organism contributes to the ongoing symphony, an invisible network of life sustained by the transformation of death into energy. Even the sediment is alive, shifting imperceptibly with the constant activity. Polychaete worms tunnel deeper, redistributing bacteria and nutrients. Microbial mats expand over every surface, creating carpets of life that feed organisms far above in the water column. Chemical gradients extend outward, attracting new generations of life that will continue the cycle for years, perhaps decades. The whale's skeleton, massive and inert to the untrained eye, has become the heart of an entire abyssal system, beating with life invisible to the surface world. The narrator's voice softens, reflective, reverent, as it traces the transformation of the whale fall. It speaks of cycles of creation born from decay, of chemical energy converted into life, of generations of creatures that exist entirely because a single giant once fell to the ocean floor. The voice lingers on the poetry of the abyss, a realm where survival is not about competition alone, but about participation in a larger, interconnected network. Every organism has its role, every action its consequence, and the skeleton remains the anchor of this invisible order. The whale, once alive and immense, has transcended individuality. Its bones now sustain hundreds, perhaps thousands of species. Tube worms rise like spires, amphipods swarm like clouds of dust, crustaceans scuttle in every hollow, and microbial mats shimmer with the rhythm of chemical life. The skeleton is a nexus, a catalyst, a generator of energy in a world without light. Death has given birth to abundance, decay has created opportunity, and the deep has transformed the fallen giant into something far greater than it ever was in life. As the camera drifts upward, the feasting site is revealed in its entirety. Vertebrae rise like a cathedral, ribs form bridges, and bones are lined with colonies of life, glowing faintly in the inky blackness. Amphipods swirl in clouds, shrimp pulse with light, and tube worms sway in the chemical currents. The seafloor itself vibrates with life, the sediment alive with unseen organisms sustaining the ecosystem. From this perspective, the whale fall is not a single event, but a living, breathing system, an entire universe built upon the generosity of one fallen giant. And yet, even in this climax, there is the promise of more. The whale's skeleton will continue to release chemical energy, attracting new waves of life. More crustaceans will arrive, more worms will burrow, more microbial colonies will expand. The feast, in its fullest expression, is a continuous process sustained over decades. The abyssal world has accepted the whale's gift, and life responds in kind, endlessly, relentlessly, beautifully. The chapter closes with the skeleton illuminated by faint bioluminescence, the glow of countless tiny lives reflecting across vertebrae and ribs. The narrator's voice lingers one last time, poetic and contemplative. From death comes abundance. From absence comes creation. The whale, fallen and silent, has become a universe. In the dark, life endures, transforms, and thrives. And the abyss, patient as always, waits for the next giant to fall. The whale's skeleton, once a singular monument of decay, has now become the foundation of transformation. Time stretches differently here, where sunlight never reaches and pressure presses like 1,000 tons from above. Life has molded itself to the skeleton's frame, adapting in ways impossible on the surface. Tube worms rise like columns of a cathedral, their plumes swaying in invisible currents, filtering chemical energy that drifts upward from marrow-depleted bones. Amphipods swarm in clouds, threading between vertebrae and ribs, their bodies reflecting ghostly bioluminescent pulses that illuminate this hidden city. Every motion, every chemical reaction is part of a larger rhythm, a symphony of life emerging from death. The bones themselves are changing. Bacteria and sulfide-consuming microbes coat every surface, secreting chemicals that slowly dissolve the mineral structure of the skeleton. Marrow cavities, once dense with organic richness, are hollowed further, forming labyrinths for worms, shrimp, and other crustaceans. Sediment shifts imperceptibly as these creatures burrow and feed, shaping tunnels, crevices, and chambers where life can thrive. The transformation is subtle, almost invisible, yet profound. Death has been converted into opportunity, and the skeleton has become a generator of chemical and biological wealth. Above the skeleton, deep-sea fish drift in arcs, their reflective eyes scanning the feasting grounds for drifting prey. Six-gill sharks linger at the edges, enormous shadows observing the ongoing activity without interfering. Their presence is part of the rhythm, a reminder that even in death, the whale asserts its influence. Predators and scavengers alike respect the pattern established here. The skeleton dictates the pace, the boundaries, the flow of energy. In this abyss, life does not dominate. It participates, it adapts, and it thrives within the framework left behind by the fallen giant. The chemical landscape of the site is now more complex than ever. Hydrogen sulfide rises in diffuse clouds, invisible yet potent, attracting new waves of specialized life. Tube worms feed, bacteria flourish, and tiny crustaceans multiply in the nutrient-rich waters. The interplay of chemical energy and biological adaptation is extraordinary. The whale fall has become a self-sustaining ecosystem, one that supports species that have never touched sunlight, that have evolved in complete isolation from the world above. Each organism, no matter how small, is a critical component of the transformation. Amphipods continue their ceaseless dance, feeding, moving, and redistributing nutrients. Their activity stirs the sediment, spreading organic particles far beyond the skeleton itself. Worms burrow deeper, creating networks that stabilize the seabed while simultaneously sustaining microbial life. The bones, once inert, are now porous, teeming with hidden activity. Crustaceans inhabit every cavity, their tiny lights flickering like stars across a vast dark canvas. The whale, though physically absent, lives on through the ecosystems it supports, a bridge between death and renewal. Even the sediment itself participates in this transformation. Fine particles of organic matter drift upward from buried detritus, creating nutrient clouds that feed microorganisms and planktonic life in the surrounding waters. The chemical gradients established by the skeleton extend far into the abyss, reaching creatures that have yet to discover the feast. The whale fall has become a hub of life, a focal point in a vast, empty world, connecting organisms across kilometers of pitch-black water. The transformation is no longer local. It resonates outward, shaping life in ways subtle but profound. The narrator's voice, soft and contemplative, guides the audience through this intricate process. It speaks of cycles invisible to human perception, of energy being transferred, transformed, and redistributed. It speaks of the whale not as a singular being, but as a catalyst for generations of life. Where decay once seemed final, it is now the architect of renewal. The skeleton is both monument and laboratory, a place where the deepest secrets of survival are being written by organisms too small to see, too numerous to count. The bioluminescent glow of the site intensifies subtly, reflecting off bones and silt alike. Tube worms pulse, amphipods swarm, and tiny shrimp dart through chemical currents. Bacteria coat surfaces in living mats, breaking down remaining organic matter and converting it into energy. The skeletal frame itself begins to take on a new texture, eroded, hollowed, and yet full of life. The whale has become a nexus, a generator of biological and chemical potential, transforming not only the creatures around it but the very landscape of the abyssal seafloor. As days and months pass, the transformation deepens. Larger tube worms expand their colonies, branching in intricate patterns. Amphipod populations swell and contract, responding to the flow of nutrients. Microbial mats thicken, spreading over bone surfaces and sediment, providing sustenance for the next wave of life. Even the bones themselves, slowly dissolving under the action of chemical and microbial processes, continue to supply energy to the ecosystem. Death has become foundation, decay has become creation, and life persists in forms invisible to the surface world. The narrator pauses, allowing the audience to reflect on the enormity of this transformation. The whale's death is not an ending, but a beginning, a process that will unfold over decades, perhaps centuries. Life here is patient, persistent, and relentless. Every organism, from the smallest bacteria to the largest predator hovering on the fringes, plays a role in the ongoing transformation. Together, they honor the gift of the fallen whale, sustaining a world in the absence of sunlight, in the eternal dark, in the crushing pressure of the abyss. The chapter closes with a wide shot of the skeletal metropolis. Vertebrae rise like columns, ribs arch like bridges, and bones host sprawling colonies of life. Clouds of amphipods swirl, tube worms pulse, and microbial mats shimmer faintly in bioluminescent light. The whale fall is no longer a scene of death. It is a living, breathing ecosystem, transforming slowly but profoundly, a testament to the resilience of life in the most extreme conditions on Earth. The abyss is alive with subtle motion, almost imperceptible to those unaccustomed to the rhythms of the deep. The whale's skeleton, stripped of flesh and slowly hollowed by microbial and chemical processes, has become a landscape of opportunity. Tube worms rise like sentinels, their feathery plumes swaying in invisible currents, filtering chemical energy that drifts upward from the bones. Amphipods swarm in silent, choreographed patterns, darting across vertebrae and ribs, their tiny bioluminescent flashes painting the darkness with ghostly light. Each organism moves with purpose, its existence intimately tied to the transformation unfolding in this isolated city of decay. The bones themselves are changing shape as much as they are sustaining life. Microbes and sulfide-consuming bacteria coat every surface, breaking down mineral content while releasing nutrients that sustain tube worms, shrimp, and small crustaceans. The marrow cavities, once dense with energy, are now hollowed chambers of chemical and biological activity. Worms burrow deeper into the sediment, creating networks of tunnels that feed microbes and redistribute nutrients, expanding the influence of the skeleton far beyond its immediate perimeter. Death has become not an end, but a force for transformation, a catalyst for creation in the darkness. Above the skeleton, predators patrol with cautious grace. Deep-sea fish glide through faint chemical plumes, picking off drifting amphipods and shrimp. Six-gill sharks, ancient and massive, circle the edges of the site, moving slowly, deliberately, like custodians of this hidden metropolis. They take only what is needed, respecting the rhythm of life dictated by the chemical and biological signals emanating from the whale fall. Here, survival is an interplay of restraint and adaptation, a system maintained by balance rather than force. The chemical landscape of the site has grown complex. Hydrogen sulfide and other chemical byproducts rise from the decomposing bones, invisible yet potent, feeding specialized bacteria and chemosynthetic organisms. Tube worms extend plumes into these currents, filtering chemical energy to sustain themselves and the colonies that thrive around them. Shrimp and small crustaceans dart through nutrient clouds, feeding and dispersing energy in an intricate web that spans the skeleton. The whale fall has become a self-sustaining generator, an oasis of chemical wealth in an otherwise barren, sunless world. Amphipods continue their tireless swarming, moving in waves that stir sediment and create microcurrents carrying nutrients outward. Polychaete worms burrow deeper, redistributing bacteria and feeding particles. Tiny crustaceans inhabit every crevice, their lights flickering like a constellation of stars across the skeletal landscape. Even the silt itself becomes part of the system, shifting imperceptibly to accommodate tunnels, burrows, and microbial mats. The transformation is complete. The whale fall is no longer simply a source of food. It is a living ecosystem, a chemical engine, a city built upon the generosity of death. Life here has become a choreography of adaptation. Every organism has its role, from the smallest bacterium to the largest predator observing from the fringes. Tube worms anchor the ecosystem, extracting energy from sulfides. Amphipods redistribute nutrients. Shrimp and crustaceans feed and reproduce. Predators patrol, maintaining balance. Microbes catalyze the transformation of bone into chemical energy. Together, they sustain a network that extends beyond the whale, connecting distant communities in a web of life. Even the water itself carries energy outward, reaching unseen organisms far from the skeleton. The narrator's voice deepens, reflective, tracing the complexity of this ecosystem. It speaks of cycles invisible to the human eye, of chemical reactions and biological interactions that transform death into life. It speaks of the whale not as a fallen giant, but as a foundation, a nexus, a generator of possibilities. Decay is no longer simply decay. It is creation, transformation, and the silent orchestration of life across the abyssal plains. Each organism, each chemical reaction, contributes to a system older than any human understanding. The bioluminescent glow of the site intensifies, illuminating the skeletal structures and the bustling life around them. Tube worms pulse rhythmically, amphipods swirl in clouds, and shrimp dart through chemical currents. Microbial mats expand across surfaces of bone and sediment, converting nutrients into energy for the ecosystem. Vertebrae rise like columns, ribs form bridges and tunnels, and the skull provides sanctuary for countless small creatures. The skeleton has become a monument not only of death, but of resilience, adaptation, and the enduring power of life in the most extreme environment on Earth. Even as transformation continues, time remains fluid. Days, months, perhaps years pass unnoticed. Tube worms expand their colonies. Amphipods multiply and disperse. Microbial mats grow thicker. Bones slowly dissolve, releasing chemical energy that sustains the entire system. The whale, though long gone from the surface, continues to influence the abyss, providing structure, resources, and energy for a complex, thriving ecosystem. Death has become a blueprint for life, and the skeleton is the canvas on which it unfolds. The narrator concludes this segment with a soft, contemplative reflection. The whale's fall is more than an end. It is a transformation. Each bone, each cavity, each particle of sediment becomes a vessel of creation. Life emerges from decay. Energy flows from absence, and the abyss bears witness to a cycle as old as the ocean itself. Here, in darkness and pressure and comprehension, life endures, adapts, and thrives, a testament to the resilience of existence in the deepest corners of our world. As the camera drifts upward, the whale skeleton is revealed in its entirety, vertebrae rising like cathedral columns, ribs forming bridges and tunnels, colonies of life shimmering faintly with bioluminescent light. Amphipods swirl in clouds, tube worms pulse rhythmically, microbial mats coat every surface, and crustaceans dart through every cavity. The whale fall has completed its transformation from corpse to ecosystem, a living monument to the enduring power of life in the abyss. Time in the abyss is measured not by hours or days, but by the slow rhythm of life reshaping itself around a fallen giant. The whale's skeleton, once inert and lifeless, has become an enduring monument to transformation. Its bones are now home to colonies of tube worms, whose feathery plumes sway in the faint chemical currents rising from the decomposing marrow. Amphipods swarm in intricate patterns, their silvery bodies reflecting faint pulses of bioluminescent light. Crustaceans scuttle through every hollow, every cavity, redistributing nutrients and contributing to the unseen energy flow that sustains this thriving ecosystem. The transformation is both physical and chemical, a process that will continue for decades. The skeletal framework itself is changing. Microbial mats coat every surface, breaking down mineral and organic matter alike. The bone is slowly hollowed, becoming porous, almost sponge-like, as bacteria and sulfide-consuming organisms penetrate deeper into its structure. Polychaete worms tunnel through sediment and bone, redistributing nutrients and creating hidden passageways for smaller organisms. Each movement, each reaction, contributes to a network of life that is invisible from above but thriving in full complexity. The whale, though dead, has become the nucleus of an entire abyssal ecosystem. Even the predators participate in the transformation. Six-gill sharks glide silently along the edges of the site, enormous shadows maintaining order without interference. Deep-sea fish patrol the currents above, picking off drifting amphipods and tiny shrimp with precise movements. Their presence is not violent, but balanced, a reminder that survival here is dictated by subtlety and restraint. Life adapts to the rhythm set by the fallen whale, where predation, consumption, and chemical transformation are all part of the same symphony. The chemical currents emanating from the skeleton have become a lifeline for species that never encounter sunlight. Hydrogen sulfide rises in invisible plumes, attracting chemosynthetic bacteria, tube worms, and specialized mollusks. These organisms harness chemical energy to feed themselves and support the broader ecosystem. Shrimp dart through nutrient clouds, crustaceans graze microbial mats, and amphipods swarm across the bones, all connected by the energy released from the decomposition of the whale. What was once death is now a dynamic force, fueling life in forms unimaginable to the surface world. Sediment itself becomes a medium of transformation. Burrowing worms redistribute particles, creating pockets of nutrients and shelter. Tiny organisms hidden within microbial mats contribute to the ongoing chemical and biological processes, expanding the influence of the whale fall outward into the abyss. Every particle of silt carries potential for life. Every movement of a worm or shrimp redistributes energy across the ecosystem. The transformation is subtle yet profound, a testament to the resilience of life under the extreme conditions of pressure, darkness, and cold. The narrator's voice deepens, reflective, almost reverent, guiding the audience through the complexity of this living system. It speaks of life emerging from decay, of chemical reactions powering organisms that have adapted to the darkest reaches of the ocean. It speaks of the whale not as a singular being, but as a catalyst for generations of life, a monument to transformation, where the boundaries between death and life dissolve into a continuous, interconnected cycle. Every organism, every chemical reaction, every movement of sediment is part of this ongoing narrative. Bioluminescence plays a central role in this transformation, painting the skeleton with shifting shades of blue, green, and faint amber. Tube worms pulse in rhythm with chemical currents. Amphipods swarm in shimmering clouds. And crustaceans dart through tunnels and crevices, their tiny lights reflecting off bone and sediment. Microbial mats shimmer faintly, a living carpet converting decay into sustenance for the next wave of organisms. The whale fall has become a cathedral of light, movement, and transformation, a monument not to mortality, but to resilience and renewal. As months pass, the ecosystem reaches new levels of complexity. Tube worms expand into larger colonies, creating dense networks across bone and sediment. Amphipods form swirling clouds that extend farther from the skeleton, feeding on microbial mats and redistributing nutrients across the seafloor. Shrimp and small crustaceans reproduce, expanding their populations into previously unoccupied crevices. Even the bones themselves, slowly eroded by chemical and microbial activity, continue to provide energy for life. Death has become a blueprint, decay a generator of abundance, and the skeleton a living, evolving system that sustains life in ways impossible above the waves. Above the skeleton, chemical gradients extend outward, linking distant organisms to the whale fall. Microbes carried on currents colonize new sediment patches, Tube worms and other chemosynthetic life forms expand their territories. Amphipods and crustaceans migrate to new areas, following the invisible signals of energy. The skeleton's influence has radiated across kilometers of abyssal plains, connecting species that will never touch the whale directly, but are sustained indirectly by the energy it released. Transformation, once local, now becomes global. The narrator's voice softens, reflective and poetic, as the camera lingers on the skeletal city. Here, in the eternal darkness and crushing pressure, life adapts, thrives, and persists. The fallen whale has become more than a monument. It is a generator of life, a nexus of chemical and biological transformation. In its decay, it gives purpose, energy, and sustenance. The abyss witnesses cycles older than memory, and the skeleton endures as a testament to the resilience of life where few could survive. The camera pulls back, showing the whale skeleton in its entirety. Vertebrae rise like pillars, ribs form bridges, and microbial mats shimmer across every surface. Clouds of amphipods swirl like smoke, tube worms pulse in chemical currents, and crustaceans scuttle through crevices. The skeleton is no longer a corpse but a living system, continuously transforming the abyss around it. Life has adapted to its presence, evolved in response to its energy, and thrived because of its fall. The transformation is ongoing, unending, and magnificent in its complexity. The whale skeleton has become a cathedral of life in the crushing silence of the abyss. Tube worms rise like pillars, their feathery plumes swaying in invisible currents, filtering chemical energy that seeps upward from marrow-depleted bones. Amphipods swarm in luminous clouds, their movements weaving a living tapestry over vertebrae and ribs. Small crustaceans scuttle along every surface, redistributing nutrients and sustaining microbial mats that cling to the bone like living paint. The skeleton, once a monument of death, is now a nexus of transformation, its decay orchestrating life on scales both microscopic and vast. Chemical currents continue to shape the ecosystem. Hydrogen sulfide and other compounds rise from the bones, invisible yet potent, feeding chemosynthetic bacteria that coat every available surface. Tube worms anchor themselves in these chemical rivers, drawing energy to sustain themselves and their expanding colonies. Amphipods and shrimp move through nutrient-laden clouds, dispersing energy and supporting life beyond the skeleton. The whale's death has become a generator of possibility, a force that reshapes the abyssal landscape, creating microhabitats that persist for decades. Sediment shifts imperceptibly under the activity of worms, crustaceans, and amphipods. Polychaete worms burrow deeper, redistributing bacteria and nutrients, while microbial mats expand across bone and silt, converting decay into energy. Each particle of sediment, each movement of a tiny organism, contributes to the ongoing transformation. The whale fall's influence now extends far beyond the skeleton itself, sustaining life across a radius unimaginable to the surface world. What was once inert is now dynamic, a living network sustained entirely by the conversion of death into chemical and biological abundance. Predators continue their silent patrols. Six-gill sharks glide along the edges of the site, their immense bodies moving with measured patience. Deep-sea fish patrol above the skeleton, feeding on amphipods and shrimp in precise, deliberate arcs. Even in the presence of these apex predators, life thrives undisturbed. The rhythm of the whale fall dictates the tempo, guiding the interactions of predator and prey alike. The ecosystem is balanced, resilient, and enduring, shaped by chemical signals, not force, and maintained by the patient, deliberate processes of the abyss. The skeleton itself evolves. Microbes hollow bones. Chemical reactions dissolve mineral structures, and the whale's remains gradually transform into a porous network. Tube worms colonize deeper cavities, crustaceans inhabit crevices, and amphipods swarm in swirling clouds. Each organism plays its role, sustaining and reshaping the system. The bones, slowly eroded, continue to feed life in every form imaginable, from bacteria to crustaceans to apex predators hovering on the fringes. Decay has become creation, death has become the architect of abundance, and the whale skeleton has transcended its original purpose to become the foundation of a living ecosystem. Bioluminescence illuminates this transformation in ghostly shades of blue, green, and faint amber. Tube worms pulse in rhythm with chemical currents, amphipods shimmer in coordinated clouds, and crustaceans dart through tunnels and crevices. Microbial mats glimmer faintly, a living carpet converting decay into sustenance for the next wave of organisms. Even the water above and around the skeleton seems alive, carrying chemical signals and nutrients to distant parts of the abyss, linking ecosystems across kilometers. The transformation is not confined to the skeleton. It radiates outward, touching life in ways imperceptible yet profound. Time is measured differently here. Months, years, perhaps decades pass in the silent, crushing darkness. Tube worms expand into sprawling colonies. Amphipods disperse and multiply. Microbial mats thicken, and crustaceans colonize every remaining crevice. The whale's influence endures far longer than its physical presence, a testament to the resilience of life in extreme conditions. What begins as a corpse has become a generator of life, a self-sustaining network of energy and adaptation that will persist long after the skeleton itself has eroded into sediment. The narrator's voice rises in soft reverence, capturing the grandeur of the transformation. The whale, fallen into the abyss, has become more than a creature. It is a catalyst. From decay comes abundance. From absence comes creation. The skeleton is a nexus of life, a generator of chemical and biological energy that sustains generations of organisms. In the darkness, life finds a way, adapting, thriving, enduring, proof that even in the most extreme corners of our planet, resilience prevails. As the camera drifts away from the skeletal metropolis, the full scope of transformation becomes clear. Vertebrae rise like cathedral columns, ribs arch like bridges, and microbial mats coat every surface. Tube worms pulse in chemical currents, amphipods swirl in clouds, and crustaceans dart through tunnels and crevices. The whale fall has become a living monument, a network of life that defies the absence of light, the crushing weight of water, and the cold that grips the abyss. Transformation is complete, not as an event, but as a continuous process, ongoing, unending, magnificent. The chapter closes with one final reflection. The whale's death, once a singular end, has become a beginning on a scale beyond comprehension. Life has adapted, thrived, and persisted, transforming what was once a silent grave into a dynamic, luminous ecosystem. In the dark, in the pressure, in the eternal silence, the skeleton endures as the ultimate testament to survival, transformation, and the extraordinary resilience of life on Earth. The whale fall has become more than a singular event. It is a monument, a living archive of life and death in the deepest reaches of the ocean. Here, in a world without light, without warmth, and under pressure that would crush any surface creature, life thrives in ways the human eye can barely imagine. The bones of the fallen giant, hollowed by time, chemical processes, and the relentless activity of scavengers, now support colonies of tube worms that rise like columns in a cathedral. Their feathery plumes sway gently in visible currents, filtering chemical energy from the decaying skeleton. Amphipods swirl through clouds of nutrient-rich particles, moving in seemingly chaotic, yet precise, patterns that redistribute energy and sustain the broader ecosystem. Every inch of the skeleton hums with life. Crustaceans scuttle through crevices, feeding on microbial mats that coat the bones. Worms burrow deeper into sediment, creating labyrinths that redistribute bacteria and nutrients. Microbial mats expand across bone and silt, converting chemical energy into sustenance for the myriad creatures that call this place home. Each organism, from the smallest microbe to the largest predator patrolling the edges of the skeleton, participates in an intricate web of energy and adaptation. The whale's death, once final and absolute, has become a force for creation, a generator of life that extends far beyond its physical remains. The chemical currents rising from the bones shape life across the abyssal plain. Hydrogen sulfide and other compounds feed chemosynthetic bacteria, which in turn sustain tube worms and specialized mollusks. Shrimp dart through nutrient-rich clouds, amphipods swarm in shimmering patterns, and crustaceans inhabit every hollow and crevice. Even the sediment is alive, carrying energy and nutrients outward, connecting unseen communities of life to the legacy of the fallen whale. What begins as death becomes a network of life, a system whose influence radiates across kilometers of the seafloor, unseen and unfathomable. Predators participate subtly, maintaining balance rather than disrupting it. Six-gill sharks glide through the periphery, enormous shadows moving with deliberate grace, while deep-sea fish patrol the currents above, feeding opportunistically. Their presence is integrated into the rhythm of the ecosystem, not as intruders, but as participants in a carefully orchestrated cycle of energy transfer. Every creature respects the invisible laws dictated by the whale fall, a silent acknowledgement that this site sustains life on a scale and in a manner that surpasses any surface ecosystem. Time has no measure here. Weeks pass into months, months into years, and the whale fall continues to sustain life long after its initial arrival on the seafloor. Tube worms expand their colonies, their bases entwined with microbial mats and sediments, creating a living lattice that reaches into every hollow of the skeleton. Amphipod populations fluctuate, swarming and dispersing in response to nutrient availability. Shrimp and small crustaceans reproduce and colonize new spaces, filling niches in a system carefully maintained by chemical gradients, predation, and consumption. The whale's remains, slowly dissolving under microbial and chemical processes, are transformed into a permanent generator of life, a living testament to the adaptability of the abyssal world. Bioluminescence continues to illuminate the skeletal city. Tube worms pulse in rhythm with chemical currents. Amphipods swirl in coordinated clouds, and crustaceans dart through tunnels and crevices, their tiny lights reflecting off the bone and sediment. Microbial mats shimmer faintly, converting decay into sustenance for the next wave of organisms. The whale fall has become a luminous metropolis in the eternal darkness, a thriving ecosystem shaped entirely by the transformation of death into energy. Even the water above and around the skeleton carries chemical signals outward, linking distant organisms to the site and extending the legacy of the whale fall beyond the immediate vicinity. The narrator's voice softens, contemplative, tracing the ongoing influence of this abyssal event. The whale fall is more than the story of a single creature's death. It is a testament to resilience, adaptation, and the enduring power of life in the most extreme environments on Earth. From decay comes abundance. From absence comes creation. The skeleton is a nexus, a generator of energy and life that sustains generations of organisms in ways unseen by the human eye. Here in the crushing darkness, life persists, thrives, and endures. The whale's bones, now porous and hollowed, are home to a dizzying array of life. Tube worms rise like living spires, amphipods swirl in clouds, and crustaceans inhabit every crevice. Microbial mats coat every surface, converting chemical energy into sustenance for the next generation. Polychaete worms burrow through sediment, redistributing nutrients and maintaining the flow of energy. The whale fall has become a permanent fixture in the abyssal ecosystem, an enduring monument to the cyclical nature of life and death, where energy is conserved, transformed, and propagated across time and space. Even predators, the apex creatures of the deep, respect the rhythm established by the whale fall. Six-gill sharks patrol silently, enormous shadows moving across the periphery, while deep-sea fish glide above, feeding with precision and restraint. No creature dominates. All participate, sustaining a balance dictated not by force, but by chemical signals, energy flow, and ecological necessity. The whale's influence persists in every interaction, every movement, every pulse of energy within this ecosystem. As the camera drifts upward, the full scale of the whale fall's legacy becomes visible. Vertebrae rise like cathedral columns, ribs form bridges and tunnels, and microbial mats coat every surface. Tube worms pulse in chemical currents, amphipods swirl like clouds, and crustaceans dart through every crevice. The skeleton is no longer simply a corpse. It is a living system, a generator of life, and a nexus of transformation. Its influence extends far beyond its physical remains, sustaining an ecosystem that is both complex and enduring, a luminous monument to the resilience of life in the abyss. The abyss holds its breath, a vast, silent theater where the story of the whale fall unfolds across decades. What began as a single event, the descent of a giant into darkness, has become an enduring saga of life, transformation, and resilience. The skeleton, once inert, now serves as a foundation for countless generations of organisms. Tube worms, anchored to ribs and vertebrae, rise like living spires, their feathery plumes swaying in the chemical currents. Amphipods swirl in dense clouds, darting among the bones with a precision born of necessity, each movement redistributing nutrients and sustaining the intricate web of life. The chemical landscape of the site has grown more complex. Hydrogen sulfide and other compounds rise invisibly from marrow cavities, feeding chemosynthetic bacteria that coat every surface. These microbes, in turn, support tube worms, crustaceans, and specialized mollusks, creating a cascading flow of energy that extends far beyond the skeleton. Sediments shift imperceptibly under the activity of burrowing worms, redistributing nutrients and stabilizing the seafloor. Every particle, every pulse, every movement is a note in the symphony of transformation, orchestrated by the persistent influence of the whale fall. Predators maintain balance with careful precision. 6 gill sharks glide along the periphery, enormous and deliberate, patrolling the edges without disrupting the system. Deep-sea fish move above the skeleton, feeding opportunistically on drifting amphipods and shrimp. They are participants, not intruders, integrated into the rhythm of life dictated by chemical and biological signals. In this ecosystem, survival is measured not in dominance, but in adaptation and cooperation, a testament to the subtle, patient forces that govern life in the abyss. The skeleton itself continues to evolve. Bones, hollowed and porous from microbial activity, host colonies of organisms that reproduce and expand, spreading life across the seafloor. Tube worms extend into newly exposed surfaces, crustaceans colonize crevices, and amphipods swarm in rhythmic clouds, responding to nutrient availability. Microbial mats expand relentlessly, converting chemical energy into sustenance that feeds a web of life spanning multiple scales. The whale, long gone from the surface, continues to shape the abyssal world, its death transformed into a generator of life and adaptation. Time flows differently here. Years may pass as tube worm colonies grow, amphipods migrate, and microbial mats thicken. Each organism plays a role in maintaining the balance of the ecosystem. Polychaete worms burrow and redistribute nutrients. Amphipods feed and disperse energy, and crustaceans reproduce and colonize new spaces. The whale fall has become a living monument, a nexus of transformation where death fuels abundance and absence gives rise to creation. Its influence stretches beyond the skeleton itself, shaping life across kilometers of seafloor. Bioluminescence illuminates this world in ethereal hues. Tube worms pulse in chemical currents, amphipods shimmer in coordinated clouds, and crustaceans dart through tunnels and crevices, their tiny lights reflecting off bone and sediment. Microbial mats glimmer faintly, converting decay into sustenance for the next wave of organisms. The water around the skeleton carries chemical signals outward, linking distant organisms to the whale fall's influence. What was once a single point of decay has become a hub of life, radiating energy and sustaining ecosystems far from its physical presence. The narrator's voice deepens, reverent, capturing the grandeur and permanence of this legacy. The whale fall is not merely a scene of death, it is a monument to life. From decay emerges abundance, from absence arises creation. Each organism, each chemical reaction, each movement of sediment contributes to a living system that endures in darkness and pressure beyond human comprehension. Here, life thrives against impossible odds, adapting, persisting, and transforming the abyssal landscape into a luminous ecosystem sustained by the generosity of a single fallen giant. Predation and survival are woven seamlessly into this living system. 6 gill sharks continue their slow patrols, their immense forms gliding along the edges with measured grace. Deep-sea fish move carefully, capturing drifting amphipods and shrimp, maintaining balance without destabilizing the web of life. Even the tiniest organisms contribute to the ecosystem's resilience. Worms borrow and redistribute nutrients. Microbes transform decay into energy, and crustaceans colonize every available surface. The whale fall has become a self-regulating, enduring system, a monument not only to one creature's life, but to the persistence of life itself in the abyss. As the camera pulls back, the full scale of the whale fall's legacy is revealed. Vertebrae rise like columns, ribs form bridges and tunnels, and microbial mats coat every surface in a shimmering carpet. Tube worms pulse in rhythm with chemical currents, amphipods swirl in clouds of light, and crustaceans dart through every crevice. The skeleton is no longer simply a corpse, but a living, dynamic system, a generator of life whose influence radiates across the abyssal plains. The whale's fall has left a permanent mark, a luminous monument to the power of transformation and the endurance of life in the most extreme corners of our planet. The chapter closes with a final reflection, poetic and reverent. In the eternal darkness, in the crushing pressure, and in the cold that grips the abyss, life endures. The whale, once a giant of the surface, has become a foundation for countless generations, a nexus of chemical and biological energy. Its legacy is not death, but creation, not absence, but abundance. Here, in the depths of the ocean, life persists, transforms, and thrives, a testament to the resilience of existence itself. The abyssal plains stretch endlessly, a realm of perpetual darkness, immense pressure, and chilling cold. Yet here, at the site of the fallen whale, life pulses with quiet determination, a symphony of survival written across vertebrae, ribs, and sediment. Tube worms rise like spires, their plumes swaying in invisible chemical currents, filtering energy from the decaying skeleton. Amphipods swarm in clouds, shimmering with ghostly bioluminescence, darting through every crevice and hollow, their tiny bodies carrying nutrients to new corners of the ecosystem. Each organism plays a role in a delicate balance, a network that has endured for decades, sustained entirely by the gift of a single whale. The chemical legacy of the skeleton extends far beyond its physical boundaries. Hydrogen sulfide, methane, and other compounds seep from marrow cavities, feeding chemosynthetic bacteria that coat every surface and provide sustenance for tube worms, mollusks, and shrimp. Microbial mats grow thicker with each passing year, converting decay into usable energy and spreading across sediment patches. Polychaete worms tunnel deep into the seafloor, redistributing nutrients and connecting distant parts of the ecosystem. The whale fall is no longer an isolated feast. It is a persistent generator of life, radiating influence across kilometers of ocean floor. Predators continue to patrol this abyssal city, but their presence is measured, deliberate, integrated into the rhythm of life. Six-gill sharks glide along the periphery, enormous and patient, maintaining order without disruption. Deep-sea fish drift above the skeleton, feeding opportunistically on drifting amphipods and shrimp. Every interaction is precise, a choreography dictated by chemical signals, energy availability, and ecological necessity. In this world, life survives not through dominance alone, but through subtlety, balance, and adaptation, a testament to the resilience of the abyssal ecosystem. Time has blurred. Decades may have passed since the whale fell to the seafloor, yet the site remained vibrant, teeming with life. Tube worms have grown into sprawling colonies, their bases interwoven with microbial mats and sediments. Amphipods continue their swarming patterns, feeding, reproducing, and redistributing energy. Crustaceans inhabit every available crevice, their population cycling in tune with the availability of chemical energy. Even as the skeleton slowly erodes, it continues to provide sustenance, a lasting monument to transformation and resilience. The narrator's voice, poetic and reverent, reflects on the enormity of this legacy. From the fall of a single giant, life emerges, adapts, and endures. Death has become a foundation for creation. Absence has given rise to abundance. In the darkness, life persists against impossible odds, sustained by energy that flows unseen, unmeasured, yet undeniable in its impact. The whale, though gone from the surface, endures here as a nexus, a generator of life, a reminder that even in the most extreme corners of our world, resilience prevails. Bioluminescence continues to paint the skeletal landscape in shades of blue, green, and amber. Tube worms pulse in chemical currents, amphipods shimmer in coordinated clouds, and crustaceans dart through tunnels and crevices, their tiny lights reflecting across bone and sediment. Microbial mats gleam faintly, converting chemical energy into sustenance for the next wave of organisms. Even the surrounding water carries chemical signals outward, connecting life far from the skeleton to its enduring legacy. This is a living monument, an ecosystem sustained entirely by transformation, energy flow, and the quiet persistence of life in darkness. The skeleton itself is no longer just a structure. It has become a framework for an enduring ecosystem. Hollowed bones host colonies of tube worms, crustaceans, and amphipods. Microbial mats coat every surface, creating carpets of life that feed organisms far above in the water column. Polychaete worms continue to burrow, redistributing nutrients and linking distant parts of the system. Even as the physical skeleton slowly dissolves under microbial and chemical action, its influence persists, a testament to the enduring power of transformation in the abyss. Life at the whale fall is interconnected on scales both minute and vast. Amphipods feed and disperse nutrients, linking microbial colonies to larger organisms. Tube worms anchor and filter energy, creating habitats for smaller creatures. Predators patrol, maintaining balance without dominance. Chemical currents extend energy far beyond the skeleton, connecting organisms across kilometers of seafloor. The whale fall is a living network, a system whose complexity rivals that of forests or coral reefs, yet exists entirely in darkness, pressure, and cold. As the camera slowly drifts upward, the full magnitude of the whale fall's legacy becomes apparent. Vertebrae rise like cathedral columns, ribs form arches and bridges, and microbial mats shimmer across every surface. Tube worms pulse rhythmically, amphipods swirl in clouds of light, and crustaceans dart through crevices. The skeleton is no longer a corpse but a living monument, radiating life and energy into the abyssal plains. Its legacy endures, a luminous testament to resilience, adaptation, and the extraordinary capacity of life to transform even the most desolate corners of the planet. The chapter closes on a reflective, poetic note. The whale's fall is more than a single story of death. It is a story of creation, transformation, and endurance. In the darkness of the abyss, life persists, adapts, and thrives. From a single fallen giant emerges a network of energy, a cathedral of organisms, and a testament to the resilience of existence. In this eternal darkness, life endures, and the legacy of the abyss lives on.